Okay, so I guess it was either the jar or the evidence list, but not the cloth. That makes sense. Let's see, what was it now? A jar fragment and a list. For all I know, you could have planted them in my office. Anyway, you can't prove when those pieces of evidence were discovered. If they were found after Dark was convicted, then they're worthless. There's no reason I'd participate in a forgery. Rearranging the crime scene wouldn't help me out in any way. Mr. Wright? Yes, Your Honor? When investigating the crime scene, you should have been more careful to observe protocol. You do understand that I am the chief of police, right? There will be consequences. Indeed. I believe I will press charges, so you won't make the same mistake again. My apologies, Chief, but would you mind waiting until tomorrow for that? Today is, well, you know. Alright, Udgy. In return, though, I know, that place, right? Huh? What are these guys, telepathic? Okay. I mean, I should probably apologize of why I haven't been able to do any episodes. My voice hasn't quite been 100%, and I figure I'd be doing good, but I can already tell it's starting to give out. So I'll try to get as far as I can with proving this point, and then we'll call it a day, because I don't want to wear out my voice too much. Okay, for all I know, you could have planted them when they were discovered. If they were found after Dark was convicted, then they're worthless. There's no reason I participate in a forgery. Rearranging the crime scene wouldn't help me out. There's a few of those things that could lead to somewhere, but let's just start in order and see where we can go. I'd appreciate it if you'd stop making these ridiculous allegations. Yes, you do have a point. You wouldn't have the guts to do something like that. What? I'll have you know, back in the day, I once broke into a cattle ranch and tipped Mr. Wright? What are you saying? Anyway, you can't prove you didn't carry in the evidence, can you? If you have proof to the contrary, you're going to need it later. Later? What are you talking about? What else? I'm talking about when Raito's prints are found. Yes, if they're found inside my safe, they would prove his investigation was illegal. Ugh. I've never faced anyone as slimy as this guy. Except his prints would be in the safe, because that's where we found it. What do you mean by that? This is all purely hypothetical, of course. But suppose I did place those items in my safe. Such an act wouldn't necessarily constitute forgery. If concealing evidence found at the crime scene isn't forgery, I'm not through speaking yet, Righto. It all depends on when the evidence was discovered. If they were found after Dark was convicted, then they're worthless. He does have a point, which is why timing is everything. Are you saying this jar fragment wasn't discovered in the initial investigation? It would appear not. After all, it wasn't listed in the evidence list. For all we know, it could have suddenly materialized the day after Dark was sentenced. Oh, and wouldn't that be convenient? Right. The Chief is talking about a possibility. So long as you can't rule that out, your remarks, however clever they may be, will only succeed in wasting time. Tell me something I don't know. Come now, Righto. Think about it. There's no reason I'd participate in a forgery. How can you look me in the eye and say that? Because I'm innocent. Remember? Who was it that murdered Neil? I'm not sure I care for the word murder here. But in the end, the person responsible for Mr. Marshall's unfortunate demise was Emma Skye. Well, now do you see? Rearranging the crime scene wouldn't help me out. Really, Chief Gant? At the very least, there is one very large benefit you've reaped from all of this. Oh, I wasn't aware. What is this benefit? That would of course be the position you have, Chief of Police. Oh! The resolution of the SL9 incident secured your promotion to Chief. That in itself is sufficient motive. Oh, that's a good one. Huh? Do you really think I'm that incompetent? What do you mean? Even without that case, I was already in line to become the next chief. The resolution of SL9 merely sped up the inevitable a little. Is that true, Edgeworth? Yes. He was going to be made chief anyway. Ah! Be careful when pointing that finger, or you might wind up being the one pointed at. So that means there's only one possible motivation for you to commit forgery. If you didn't do it for yourself, then you did it for someone else. Don't be silly, Worthy. You know me better than that. There are only 3 people I look out for. Me, myself, and I. There, it's out in the open now. Oh gee, would you mind if I change my testimony a little? By all means, please do. Okay, changing testimony. I wouldn't be anyone's accomplice if there was nothing in it for me. Okay. So we found where we're supposed to press, or I guess present, but what? Nothing in it for you? I'm sorry, but the only person I care about is yours truly. That girl, Lana's little sister, was it? If you think I felt sorry for her, you'd better think again. You're right. You don't feel sorry for anyone. Be tough on crime and tough on people. That's how I was raised. You seem to be lax enough on yourself, though. Oh, that's a good one, Worthy. Could that there have been something in it for him? Given his selfishness, would he have helped someone out? Point out... Yes! Because that was what... I think it was Angel that brought out that possibility. It wasn't necessarily for him to become chief of police. It was Lana to become chief prosecutor. True. You might not have helped out anyone for their sake. But if it would benefit you, you might decide to assist someone. Mr. Wright, it appears you're positively determined to portray the chief as a nice man who likes to lend people a hand. That's not what I mean! Very well then. Who is this person you believe Chief Gant may have helped forge evidence? I mean, it would have had to have been Lana. because it was through that he was able to make her chief prosecutor. Going from a detective to the head of prosecutors is a pretty big leap. So it had to have been because of her. At least I believe so? I mean, for some reason, I'm kind of gravitating towards Goodman for some reason. Victim and a good man, or was he? But no, I think it's pointing towards Lana. It's pointing to the fact that he was able to put her from being his partner to the chief prosecutor. Chief Prosecutor Lana Skye? The defendant? I believe it's quite obvious in light of the circumstances. Emma Skye fell victim to an unfortunate series of events. Who would want to help her more than her own sister, Lana? And as for Chief Gant, he would also have a reason to help Lana if she asked him to. That reason, of course, is self-profit. Self-profit? What do you mean? After the SL9 incident was resolved, Lana Skye was appointed chief prosecutor at the prosecutor's office. The person who arranged this job change was you, Chief Gant. But how would he profit from all of this? He would be able to use the chief prosecutor as his puppet. Essentially, he would acquire unchecked authority over all investigations. Do you mean to tell me that despite the chief's formidable appearance, he plays with puppets? Oh, wait. You must mean puppet as in someone forced to do his bidding. Never mind. Admit it, Chief! You assisted Lana Skye in forging evidence. Your motive? To appoint her as chief prosecutor, so you could control her! Righto, my boy. You have quite an imagination. Let me ask you something. What? Do you have any proof of this? That I controlled Lana? For example, is Lana testifying that I've done such a thing? Lana? She's keeping quiet to protect Emma. There's no way she'd testify against Gant. I'm afraid without any proof, this all amounts to nothing more than mere conjecture. Unless that is also what happened in this incident. This incident? Which one would that be? Of course, I'm talking about the murder of Detective Bruce Goodman. The chief prosecutor has been acting strange throughout this entire trial. Almost as if someone has been controlling her. Worthy, you'd better watch your tongue. I wouldn't want you to get hurt. Just what do you mean? What he means, Your Honor, is that Chief Gant is involved in the murder of Detective Goodman. Not only that, but the Chief is now making Lana take the rap to cover up his involvement. What? Order! I said order! Mr. Wright, you can't be serious! Huh? This is an affront to the highest-ranking officer in our law enforcement agency. To accuse the chief of police of blackmail and murder? That's impossible! Your Honor, I was merely reiterating what Mr. Edgeworth said in easier-to-understand language. It's too late, Mr. Wright. There's no turning back for us now. It looks like he's the one who decided to go through with this. Can you prove this, Mr. Wright? That the chief, a high-ranking officer of the law, is involved in this murder? Good question. Regardless of his rank or title, Chief Gant is just a man. The question is he a criminal? I believe the evidence will tell. I see. Alright then. Let's see what Mr. Wright's got. And it better be good. Show us this evidence that ties Chief Gant to the murder of Detective Goodman. Oh boy. Okay. What would tie Gant to... Oh! Oh! I think I know. It's the ID card record, right? Because that has to be the 777. That has to be Chief Gant because that was the code to his safe. It had to be someone of a high-ranking position. Goodman had to have been accessing his safe somehow in order for Marshall to be able to get in there. I think it's as simple as the ID card record. Because Phoenix is convinced that Goodman was still murdered in the evidence room. If that's the actual place of Goodman's murder, this has to be it. This is the ID card list. Yes, the one that shows who entered the evidence room on the day of the crime. There was one ID on the list we couldn't determine was the owner of yesterday. 777-7777. Sorry, but there's no way you can prove that's my card number. It's your number. What? How do you know that? The safe in Chief Gant's office requires a code to open. A 7-digit code. 7 digits? You don't mean... I'm afraid so, Your Honor. The code was 777-7777. The same as the remaining ID card number on that list. Chief Gant, you entered the evidence room on the day of the crime! Order! Order! Chief Gant, what do you have to say? Nothing. The defense's search of my office was in violation of regulations. And I will demand Mr. Wright be punished to the maximum extent of the law. But right now, this court demands an explanation from you about the use of this ID card. Chief Gant, so you admit it? You entered the evidence room on the day of the crime? What about it? I'm chief of police. Whether it's the evidence room or the bathroom, what's the difference? I can go anywhere I want. Tell me, when you entered the room, were you alone? I always go to the bathroom alone, as I do with the evidence room. Detective Goodman wouldn't have happened to be with you that day, would he? Of course not! Why would he be? I hadn't seen him in days! You hadn't seen him in days? Chief Gant, I'm afraid you've just undone yourself. On that day, you had to have met with Detective Goodman! What do you mean? This trial's purpose is to determine Lana Sky's guilt. No, it isn't, Your Honor. This trial's purpose is to determine the truth. If Chief Gant met the victim on the day of the crime, then we need to determine one thing. What transpired during that meeting? In that case, Mr. Wright, I'm going to have to ask you for evidence. Show us proof that the victim went to meet Chief Gant on the day of the crime. Okay. So why did Goodman meet Chief Gant? The lost item report? Can only be submitted to the Chief of Police! Yeah! That's exactly it! Detective Goodman lost his ID card on the day of the crime. Or to be more accurate, Jake Marshall stole it. So Detective Goodman filled out a lost item report. He would have had to have given that report to the Chief of Police. Yet you are in possession of the report, which means you can't be sure if he filed it. He filed it. How do I know, you ask? Because he needed to enter the evidence room that day. He needed to? Yes, to transfer the evidence out. Oh. Detective Goodman took the form to you, Chief Gant. Then, you accompanied the detective to the evidence room. I accompanied him. There's no other way the murderer and Detective Goodman could have entered the room. Hold on! Let me guess what you're going to say next. I, the Chief of Police, murdered poor Goodman. Exactly. But wait! The Chief didn't necessarily need to accompany him to the evidence room. He could have just lent him his ID card. Yes. Now that you mention it, I believe I might have done something of the sort. Sorry, but that's not possible. According to the record, your card was only used once. Yet you showed us your ID card earlier. If you had really lent it to Detective Goodman, it would have been found on his body! No! Chief Gant! You didn't! The murder was most likely a spur-of-the-moment crime, for no one in their right mind would choose the police department as a place to commit murder. After the murder, you contacted Lana at the prosecutor's office. Why? To dispose of Detective Goodman's body, of course. You're forgetting, Mr. Wright, that the victim's body was discovered in the prosecutor's office parking lot. How did he manage to move it there? I was at the police department the entire day, you know. And everyone's aware that Lana stayed at the prosecutor's office after the ceremony. Everyone except me, it seems. Still, you're the chief of police. You have an entire police force at your disposal. Oh, so you think I just ordered an officer to do it? Hey, you! Take this here dead body over to the prosecutor's office! I don't think so. Chief Gant, you left all the evidence we need to prove how you moved the body to the prosecutor's office. And all this time, I thought it was a useless clue just taking up space. How could the chief have moved the body? Mr. Wright, show us this evidence. To move the victim's body, Chief Gant used this. What do we have that we haven't used yet? The screwdriver? I'm trying to think, what have we not used? It's also the piece of cloth. No, the piece of cloth was found in the safe. Is it the screwdriver? Yeah, it is, because that's why Gant wanted Edgeworth to go in there. And we have had zero use of this since we got it. It's gotta be the screwdriver. This is how he moved Detective Goodman's body. What's that? A screwdriver? But what does that have to do with this case? Mr. Edgeworth, think back to the day of the crime. What is this screwdriver doing here? It's here because... I was asked to go. By Chief Gant, no less. He told me he wanted me to keep it here in the prosecutor's office. In any case, on the day of the stabbings, I brought this back here. After the ceremony ended that day, I didn't plan to return to the prosecutor's office. But you did, because Chief Gant asked you to. You mean The body was found in the trunk of Mr. Edgeworth's car. I think it's obvious what happened. The body was moved by that car! Detective Goodman's body was carried in the trunk of Mr. Edgeworth's car? Yes. Unless, of course, you have another explanation, Chief. Why else would you have asked Mr. Edgeworth to transport evidence from a closed case? There's only one plausible explanation. To transport the body to your accomplice, Miss Lana Skye! Order! 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 What is going on here? Is there no room for rebuttal to the defense's outrageous accusations? Think back to the photograph Miss Starr took at the prosecutor's office. This was not a photo of the body being stuffed in the trunk to be taken away. It was exactly the opposite. It is a photo of the body being taken from the trunk. Chief Gant, please, say something! I believe... your time's up. My time's up? Sorry, Righto, but I'm having lunch with the District Attorney General after this. We have to get going if we'll make it in time for the early bird special. But the cross-examination isn't finished yet! Remember what I told you earlier. A police chief has all kinds of weapons at his disposal. Weapons? Like the right to refuse to testify. I'm invoking that right now. What? That's not a right to be casually invoked. There are certain risks to be considered. So you're going to just run away after all this? Run away. Don't make me laugh, Worthy. I stabbed old Goodman. That's what you're saying, right? But if you had any conclusive evidence, you would have presented it by now. Well, You think I had Lana dispose of the body? If so, then show your proof and get it over with. I'll say it again, Mr. Wright. Damon Gant is the current chief of police. This court will not tolerate any accusations against him without concrete proof. Well, Mr. Wright, Your Honor, do you have any concrete proof? Proof that Chief Gant murdered Detective Goodman and made Miss Skye dispose of his body. Do I have any concrete proof? Do we? The fingerprints? Found on a bloody handprint on Marshall's own locker. The print had been... Well, no, it's not that one. The floor plans? Because there's still that missing handprint. But is that concrete proof? I'm still wondering about this, because this looks like just kind of fingerprints over here. I mean, Goodman was found having this knife stabbed in him. It was Joe Dark's knife that was used to stab Goodman. I don't think anything else is necessarily there. Edgeworth knife doesn't have any prints. Do we? I'm gonna quick save real quick. Thankfully, I haven't lost any points. I'm gonna try. I can't let him just squirm his way out of this. I've got to keep the pressure on. Yes, Your Honor. I do have such evidence. Then please hurry up and present it. Just remember, it better prove Chief Gant murdered Detective Goodman beyond a shadow of a doubt. Oh boy, okay. I mean, I'm thinking the switchblade knife. Because, I mean, why else would Lana want to try to keep it hidden? We already had the screwdriver. The rubber glove, maybe? That doesn't really prove that he murdered Goodman, though. That's on Marshall's. And then there's the evidence room. Which, I mean, we have that handprint there. That's unaccounted for. It doesn't necessarily... It might be? It's either the knife, or it's this. Because that would explain the gigantic pool of blood right in front of Goodman's locker, and the bloody handprint on the blue badge, or behind the blue badger. And because Gant was the only possible person that could have been in that room with him, it had to have been that. There was no traces of that blood pile there when Meekins was stabbed. And then there's also just the matter of that handprint. Yeah, I was originally thinking the knife, but I'm going to say the floor plans. The knife still leaves room for doubt that it could have been someone else, but the floor plans definitely prove that Gant was there that did it. Oh, come on! Damn it! Okay. I thought I had a pretty good case for that. Oh, it actually is taking me back here. Interesting. If it's taking me back here... I mean, I'm gonna go with the knife. And if not the knife, then I'm just gonna say I don't have any proof. The fact that it brings me back there... The fact that it brings me back there kind of leads me to believe that maybe I just don't have that evidence. I'm gonna try the knife. It's not the knife. Okay. So those were the only two pieces of evidence that I thought it would be. We could say we don't have proof. If it is taking me back here, then I'm going to just assume that maybe I just don't have it. It's no use showing evidence I'm not even sure of myself. No, Your Honor. At present, I have no conclusive evidence. Ha! See, G? In that case, this court is forced to penalize you for your allegations against the chief. What? Here's a tip. Never gamble what you can't afford to lose, Righto. It seems that Lady Luck was on my side again today. Okay, Aji, I'll leave the rest to you. Oh, did I just screw up? I warned you earlier, Mr. Wright. This is an affront to a senior officer of our nation's law enforcement agency. What? Lady Luck, Maybe we should have a word with her. Mr. Edgeworth? What do you mean? There's one lady who knows the real truth behind this trial. We haven't yet had the honor of hearing her testify. A lady who knows the truth? Another witness? In the absence of conclusive evidence, the only other method of proof is testimony. But Chief Gant has invoked his right to refuse to testify. There's still someone else. One more witness who can answer all the questions raised in this trial. Someone in this very room. Mr. Edgeworth, who is this person? Why are you asking me, Your Honor? Have you forgotten? The defense is the one calling witnesses today. Mr. Wright, does such a witness exist? She may not be willing to tell the truth, but we can't just stop now. Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls forth Lana. The defendant? Miss Lana Sky? She was in the underground parking lot at 5:15 p.m. on February 21st. Her task? To dispose of the victim's body. In accordance with a certain someone's orders. Mr. Edgeworth, the prosecution has no objections, Your Honor. Very well. The court will now take its final recess for the day. In 15 minutes, we will reconvene to hear the defendant's testimony. This court is now in Who is this? Hold on. Huh? Oh, it's Gant! Hold on. Chief Gant, I thought you were going to eat. Listen good, Lana. He's talking to Lana. I don't think you need me to tell you this, but if you accept Mr. Wright's claims, there will be terrible consequences. That's right. Your sister will be found guilty for Neil Marshall's murder. This isn't good. Of course, you never support such outrageous claims anyway, right? Just something to think about. Alright then, I've got a lunch date to meet. Okay, well, if there aren't any further objections, this court is now in recess. And with that, I'm gonna call it a day. So, join us next time as we go to another part of this trial, apparently. I gotta rest my voice. Until next time, everyone, take care.